guys, so today I wanted to do a video as sort of a response video. I normally don't do these just because they are kind of not necessary, but YouTube recommended that I watch this video of Raleigh's, and if you don't know who she is, she's pretty popular on YouTube and Instagram, but she was talking about wild Mustangs and rescuing them and whatnot. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch it, because I'm the Mustang lady, and I freaking love Mustangs. So I was like, okay, I'll watch this video. And it didn't take very long for me to get kind of annoyed. So I wrote myself some notes, and I'm going to basically just correct some of the points. I'm in no way bashing her, I just want to make sure that the information that she's putting out, that people know that it's not necessarily true, and that she's misguided in a lot of her points throughout the video. She did make a couple of good ones, but for the most part, it was one-sided and kind of false information. So the first 3.5 minutes of the video you can kind of skip if you want to go and watch it, because she's basically talking about these death camps for horses in the Grand Canyon, which has nothing to do with Mustangs. She doesn't say that Mustangs are being used in any way. It's just basically she wanted to talk about this one very unfortunate thing that's happening. So that's great and all, but that could have been its own video if she wanted to talk about it. It didn't have anything to do with the rest of the video at all. So her first point is that the biggest problem with Mustangs is the rate of removal, and that statistically there are not enough horses, and that there should be more on the range. Now, if you do any kind of research on Mustangs, you will find out that there are 47,000 Mustangs, and that their population doubles every 4 years because of how well horses repopulate or breed between themselves. The BLM is trying to control that a little bit, because right now we're at quite a lot of Mustangs, and the range doesn't really have a whole lot of space for another 47,000 to go on, in addition to what we already have. And she says that about 1,000 horses are taken off of the range each year, which is pretty accurate. Give or take, depending on the year. They might take more or less, but there's so many of them that within 4 years, that 1,000 that they took off, or that 4,000 that they took off, really didn't do that much to the population. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, there are 27,000 Mustangs in Nevada alone, which is over half of the Mustang population in just one state. There are some states like Montana and New Mexico that don't have a whole lot of Mustangs. Like, those states, yes, there are not that many, but you have to look at, as a whole, are there a lot of Mustangs or not? There are. And if you, just to put this in perspective, there are 2,000 more wild Mustangs than there are Friesians. Friesians have 45,000 registered and documented horses alive at the moment. So that's a lot of horses in that aren't in human care. They're just out in the wild fending for themselves. So then she goes on to say, and she says this comment a few times, that if the horses don't get bid on, if they don't get adopted, that they then go to slaughter. This is not true at all. It's actually illegal for the BLM to send horses to slaughter. And now, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, because sure, some of them probably do go to slaughter, because there's 2 different ways in which you can adopt a wild Mustang. The first is going through the regular adoption process, where the first year you're basically on a trial run, and if the BLM thinks that you did a good job and that the horse is well taken care of, you then get the title. Then you can also buy out the title, which is like an instant buy, and the horse is automatically yours. That doesn't happen very often. So then she goes on to talk about the Cloud Foundation, and how almost all of her information comes from the Cloud documentaries and that kind of explains a lot for me, because the Cloud Foundation, while it is a great thing and the lady is doing some really good work, it is very one-sided and romanticized as far as Mustangs go. This lady basically wants all the Mustangs to run wild and free and never be rounded up and just be left alone, which can't really happen, unfortunately, because there's not enough outside forces to control the population, which is why the BLM is so determined to control the population, because horses don't get eaten by cougars all that much, or bears, or anything like that. Depending on what state they're in. Some states you'll have more horse deaths through natural causes like that. But so she says that she didn't know a whole lot about Mustangs until she watched those documentaries. So you're making a video on something that you don't have a whole lot of knowledge about, that you haven't researched a whole lot of, and you think that's a good idea. So you're basically going to be spreading this false information. I personally don't like that. If I don't know enough about a subject, I'm not going to make a whole video on it. Making one or two false statements in a video is one thing, but making an entire video about false statements is completely different. So then she goes on to talk about how in Colorado, because that's where she lives, she usually sees 2 roundups a year, sometimes 3. If you look up on the BLM's website, you can see their tentative fiscal year for roundups. They usually don't add or subtract anything off of that list unless it's like a dire situation. But that'll show you how many horses are being taken off of what range, when it's going to happen, how many horses were taken off if it's already happened, so on and so forth. I'm not sure if they added on the PVP how many horses are injected each year, or how many horses are going to be injected each year, because that is sort of a newer thing that they're doing. I'm not sure if that was added on to that chart, but you can look all of that information up, so you can see when those things are going to happen. And then the BLM does bidding periods. On their website you can see them. I look at them quite often. It's like every month to month and a half or so they do another bidding cycle where horses from different ranges get put on the website, you get a look at pictures of them, and then bid on them from online, so you don't actually have to be at the facility to participate. And it goes for a couple of weeks at a time, the bidding cycle itself. And I've seen some of those horses on there for at least a year or more, because they just don't get bidded on. But, like, that there proves that the horses don't go to slaughter afterwards. But yeah, that's how their bidding works, is they go, okay, these horses weren't bid on, so we're going to archive those until our next bidding cycle, and then the next bidding cycle will bring them back. And it's very rare for the horses to drop below the 125 range. I have seen it, just because they're like, we've had these horses for so many years and we can't really get rid of them, so we're going to drop their bidding a little bit. The burros are also at a lower cost. I don't remember exactly what their base bidding fee is, but that all, you can see it all online through the BLM's website. You go into the facility galleries, I think is the tab. She then makes a good point that Mustangs are good teachers. She talks about how her horse Link was a 2-year-old in a facility that was in an adoption facility, and he didn't have a whole lot of adult horse guidance, so he was ill-mannered. And then he was put into a pasture after she adopted him with a 12-year-old freshly gelded Mustang, who taught him basically the ins and outs of being a horse and taught him manners and stuff like that. She then kind of backhands that statement by making it sound like Mustangs are a good pasture ornament, and that, oh, if you've got a bunch of horses in pasture, you should buy a Mustang so that those horses learn more manners. She also says that the Mustangs will teach the other horses life skills. I've had a Mustang for 15 years. She was in a paddock with two other horses for 12 or 13 that 15 years. Well, 12 and a half. And she knows how to pick all kinds of stuff out of her food. Like the other day, she picked all of her alfalfa out of her orchard mix because she's upset that I switched her off of straight alfalfa, which she was getting for like a day and a half. And now she's pissed at me. She also knows how to pick foxtails out of hay because we accidentally fed foxtails infested hay before. And none of my other horses learned how to do that kind of stuff. Only she did. So they don't really teach them those kinds of life skills. Sorry, they just don't. Then she starts to say that rescue horses and Mustangs are basically the same thing, which they're really not. And then she says that they are, they're both leery, but wild Mustangs have never had a traumatic experience with people like rescue horses have. And I'm sorry, but the whole roundup process is pretty traumatic in and of itself. And that is all around people. They're being chased by a helicopter, they're being chased with people with flags into this enclosure. They then get branded, and sometimes their feet get trimmed, which they get put into this little chute thing that flips them over sideways. Their feet get ground down, and then they get flipped back up and let to go. And then they're just surrounded by people all the time that then chase them into a trailer, get them to the holding facility, and now they're being chased around a little pen so that they can get pictures of them for the website. So it's all a very traumatic experience for them. I don't know where she's seeing that Mustangs aren't going through some kind of trauma when they get rounded up, but okay. She also says that it's no different adopting a rescue horse than it is a Mustang, which that's actually not true. The BLM has a very strict rule book for what your facility needs to look like before the horse is even allowed to be, before you're even allowed to bid, basically. And some of the rules are like the fencing has to be 6 foot or higher for horses that are over 2. If they're younger than 2 or burro, I think it's 5 feet. I think it's like a 400 square foot enclosure. You really don't want to put them out in a paddock. Because it'll be really hard for you to catch them. You have to have a specific kind of shading, a specific watering and feeding. It's very, very technical, and you have to check all of their boxes before you can get one of the horses. I don't know a whole lot of rescue places that do that kind of stuff, and they're so particular about the facility itself. But the BLM and a lot of rescue facilities are the same in one way, which is you basically go 1 strike and you're done. So if you mess up, the BLM will go, oh, you're not allowed to adopt horses anymore. I know some rescues do that, not all, but some of them do. The same kind of thing, like, hey, you messed up, or hey, you gave us the horse back, so you're not allowed to adopt anymore. She then makes another good point that Mustangs are really great horses and that they can be better than some domesticated horses, which is true. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. So then the last point that she makes is that Mustangs are a pivotal part of our history and history around the world, and that we need to make sure that Mustangs around the world are taken care of. I don't think Raleigh understands A, basic horse history, and B, where these Mustangs are in the world. There is such thing as a Spanish Mustang, which I guess can sort of be where she's going with this. I don't know. But Spanish Mustangs are a little bit different than American Mustangs. They are actually a purebred, and I think you can actually register them. But America is the only place where Mustangs are a wild breed. They are nowhere else. They are just in America. Sorry, Raleigh. And actually, horses were only a thing in America after the 1500s when the Spanish conquistadors came over and were pillaging everything. And they went, okay, we got all this new stuff that we got to put on the boat, so we don't have room for horses. and we got more horses back home, so bye horses, we're gonna just let you go, and you can figure your lives out. After that, we then got wild horses into the Americas. And it's not even proven that Spanish Mustangs are the exact horses that were brought over. Some people say that it was the Spanish Barbs. Some people say it was like Andalusians. The only Mustangs that have been tested and proven that they come from Spanish Mustangs are Kiger Mustangs, which are in like Oregon area. But yeah, American Mustangs are only in America. They are not around the world. They are not part of the world's history. She also says that Mustangs are where all other horses came from, which is also very inaccurate. The only horse that was bred with another horse and a Mustang was the quarter horse, which was a thoroughbred, believed to be a thoroughbred and a Spanish Mustang, made the quarter horse breed, which is not an American Mustang. Sorry, it's still a Spanish Mustang. They're different. So sorry, Raleigh, but Mustangs are not as widespread as you think they are. But yeah, anyhow, guys, this video already got a little long, and but I hope this taught you a little bit more about Mustangs. I do have a video on the BLM and Mustangs, answering some of the very commonly asked questions about them, and so forth. I did it like, I want to say almost a year ago, but I will link that video in the description if you wanted to check that one out, if you wanted more information about Mustangs. I did make a few comments from that video in this one, bringing up that information. But yeah, guys, so I think we're going to end it